Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. For today's video, I want to talk about a topic that has been on my mind recently and is one that I've been meaning to get around to for quite a while now, but I thought given that we've gone through this recent facility event, this is a good time to check in on my Halidom, which I've never really shown off before, and I also wanted to address a comment I made during my Gotcha Math video. So if you watched that video, you'll know that one of my pieces of advice was to save Wyrmite, including not spending Wyrmite for Smithwyrms. Now, in retrospect, I think that I was probably a bit too dogmatic with that suggestion. So what I want to do today is talk about the pros and cons to buying Smithwyrms, how I manage my Halidom, and basically say that I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer when it comes to getting Smithwyrms or not. And I think a lot of it comes down to player preference. Smithwyrms do cost Wyrmite. The third Smithwyrm costs 250, the fourth costs 400, and the fifth and final one costs 700, for a total of 1350 if you get them all. Not even a tenfold summon, so it's not a huge cost. And I do think there is merit to getting Smithwyrms, but for me, my priority with Wyrmite is always summoning, and even 1350 going towards summoning. I think that's the most entertaining way I can spend my Wyrmite in a way. And also, just with my background in other gachas, I just feel like the summoning currency, my instinct is to try to save that as much as I can. So I haven't really had too many issues with clearing content in the game. I will say I haven't gone for High Midgard Stormer, and that is the one thing that I think having more Smithwyrms would probably put me in a better position to clear right now, but that's not the only constraint I face on that. I haven't been grinding out the IO. I only have about 270 Jade Insignias, and I have 200 of the big Jade Insignias, so I'm still a ways off from that Wyrmprint. As you can see, I only have 700,000 rupees, so I'm still a ways off from 900,000 for a 5-star elemental weapon. So I don't think the Smithwyrms are the only constraint on me not beating High Midgard Stormer. I think a lot of it is I just don't want to spend my ashes and my stamina to grind that up, because that's not really what I find fun in the game. I prefer to go wide, and that's part of why my Halidom level is pretty high, even though I only have 2 Smithwyrms. So this is my Halidom, just to show it off a little bit. I've never really presented it on video. I've shared screenshots over on the Discord. Right now my facility level is 507, and I've had 2 Smithwyrms since the beginning of the game. I've never spent Wyrmite to speed up building. My Halidom is currently at level 7, and I'm a ways off from getting to facility level 550 in order to level that up. But there's not really a benefit to do so, because as you can see, I have a lot of space that's just full of decorations. My smithy is already max level, which means I can craft 5-star elemental weapons. And as for my other buildings, while none of my buildings are maxed out at level 30, I wouldn't say they are super low either. And I'll get into how I strategize and prioritize them. So my rupee mines, let's go ahead and collect all so we can see these. My rupee mines are around level 18, all of them. My dragon tree is level 19, and this is one of the ones where having extra Smithwyrms would speed things up quite a lot. It does take a while. All of my dojos are level 8, except for my sword dojos, which are 11, and my bow dojos, which are 9. I have 2 of each dojo, of course. Wind Draclith, level 4. Not a super useful facility, so I don't really spend time leveling that. And my altars are around 20, except for my water altars. So light are both at 20. Water is the lowest at 18. Flame are both at 22. Wind are both at 23. And right now I'm working on Shadow. One of them is a little higher than the other one, 21 and 22. And the rest of the facility level is coming from my Sweet Retreat being level 30, and my Wind Shrine being level 30 as well. So, as you can see, I'm not somebody who has focus on getting one of my dojos for my favorite character, or say a character intended to face High Midgard Stormer, up to level 16. I also haven't put everything into the Flame Shrines, but here is my general tip, and I haven't had any trouble clearing the content outside of that in the game. This is my preference, but my tip is anticipate future content, and by doing that, you can get your facilities to where they need to be in order to clear that content more easily. So if you're wondering why my wind altars are a little bit higher than everything else, it's because once A Wish to the Winds was announced, I knew that a wind-based event where we'd fight water enemies was coming up, and from that point, I said, okay, I want to level up my wind altars. And there are only 2 wind altars. Even if I had 3, 4, or 5 Smithwyrms, I couldn't level up more than 2 at a time. Sure, I could level up my dojos, maybe I could have one on my dragon tree, but that's kind of my perspective on it. If you're able to foresee future content, every time, say, a flame event comes out, if I know a few days in advance, I can get another couple levels on these altars. Water is my lowest right now because the water event where we fought against Fraganoth was the first one in the game. But that's kind of my approach, and that's why right now I'm leveling up my shadow facilities, because I anticipate, since we haven't gotten a event where light enemies were our main foe, I anticipate that I'm going to want these shadow altars a little bit high. Now it might end up being water, and if that happens, toward the beginning of the event, I'll start to level up my water altars. But that's generally my strategy. And during the day, because some of these are still low level, if I have, say, 8 hours during the day, and don't want to spend a long time on an 18 or 16 hour or 24 hour, I'll do these dojos in between. Now, I do think I'll reach a point where everything's going to take 18 plus hours, but in my opinion, in the game, there's not a content wall outside of high dragon trials. And yes, I have gotten pretty lucky with my 5-star summons, but I haven't had any 5-star gacha dragons that are relevant to the challenges we've faced. And the other thing is, these epithets from these events are purely cosmetic, right? So I think this is enough if you want to be able to complete the events in terms of rewards, at least all of the functional ones, and be able to complete most of the content in the game. I think you can really do that with 2 Smithwyrms. Now, the cons to having 2 Smithwyrms are, as these hours increase, it's going to become harder and harder to max out my facility levels, max out my Halidom in general, but I really see that as a long-term goal, like over years of playing this game. And so while I could get there faster with 5 Smithwyrms, right now I just don't see that making a huge difference in my day-to-day gameplay. And I think for that reason, the sweet spot might be between 3 and 4, and that would let me, say, have one on the dragon tree all the time, and use the other 2 for other types of level ups that I wanted. But at least at this point in the game, I haven't really had an issue as far as content goes, just using these 2 Smithwyrms. And I think if your priority is summoning, then one of the pros of not getting the Smithwyrms is basically that 1350 Wormite. Another pro I would mention is, it's less to manage in a way. So I only have 2 Smithwyrms, right? So I'm just checking in when those are done. If I had 5 Smithwyrms, I feel like I would be checking into the game a lot more. And while I can't say that because that's not my experience with the game, I do think that that could become an issue, and I do think resource depletion could become an issue. Right now I have 700,000 rupees because I just played this event, but like I said, upgrade this Halidom or craft a 5-star elemental, that's going to get down very quickly. So those are some of the pros I think to not getting Smithwyrms. But now I want to talk about the pros to getting Smithwyrms, because I know a lot of you have gone this route, and I think the early and still popular wisdom with the game is Smithwyrms are a worthwhile investment, And I do think, depending on your preferences, if you're not as focused on summoning as I am, Smithwyrms could be good for you. So here are some of the pros. Number 1, Smithwyrms are non-random, and the gacha is random. So you're getting a guaranteed item, and from the gacha, those 1350 Wyrmite, you have no idea what you're going to get. It could be really good for you, it could be pretty useless to you. So it is something to keep in mind that if you're risk averse and don't like that randomness of the gacha, maybe you'd rather have a Smithwyrm. The next thing I'd say is, depending on your impulse control, it might be good to buy Smithwyrms. And that is because if you're just going to burn that 1350 Wyrmite to, say, do a tenfold on a showcase that you really don't need to pull on, then maybe by buying the Smithwyrms, you've gotten a long-term investment and prevented yourself from just splurging that Wyrmite in a way that's not super useful to you. So I think those are two of the direct reasons why it can be good in terms of summoning versus Smithwyrms. Besides that, I do think if one of your immediate goals is high-end content like the High Dragon Trials, then having, say, 4 Smithwyrms or even 3 to do your altars and the dojos of the person that you want to bring to that challenge, that is going to probably make that faster for you. So yes, you will progress more quickly with more Smithwyrms. But I just ask this, to what end? Are you really getting behind by not having enough Smithwyrms? I don't really agree with that. I think that there are a lot of different players at all levels of progression in the game, and there's no PvP in the game. So I don't think that just by having my level 22 Flame Altar, I'm so far behind somebody with a level 30 Flame Altar. Now maybe for facing High Midgard Stormer, it's going to be more difficult for me, but that is not really my priority like I said in the beginning. So that's why it comes back to what I also said, which is I just think this really depends on preferences. So I do want to redact what I said in my summoning video a little bit. And like I said, I think I was a bit too strongly worded with that you should never buy Smithwyrms. If your goal is purely summoning, and if the joy you get out of this game is getting new characters, reading their stories, having that random chance of something good, then yes, you probably can get by with 2 Smithwyrms. But if you would rather hedge against that randomness, if you want to take on High Dragon Trials, if you want to see your Halidom grow more quickly, then there is merit to purchasing them. So that's the main thing I want to say. For those of you operating with a low amount of Smithwyrms, that key tip of anticipating future content can help keep you ahead of the curve. I've been able to get all the epithets. For instance, on the previous challenge, A Wish to the Winds, I was able to get the 100-second clear with a level 21 Wind Shrine and natural 4-star and 3-star adventurers, one of whom I had promoted. So not using a gacha 5-star at all for that. Had a level 40 Midgard Stormer for that. So I think that it's not necessary, it can help you, and ultimately it comes down to your preference about would you rather take the risk and summon, do you like summoning, or would you rather have something over the long term that will give you a pretty good quality of life and will allow you to upgrade multiple facilities. Either way, I leave that choice to you. Definitely let me know what your approach has been. I do think a lot of people saw at the beginning of the game the common advice of it is worth Smithwyrms, you should buy them, and so if you already have them, I don't think you should feel buyer's remorse at all. I'm sure that in most scenarios you're able to put all of them to work and it's probably pretty good for you. I do wonder what will happen as you max out your facilities, and especially as people start to max out their Halidoms. Right now the highest level Halidom you can have is level 9, but if we're going to be getting level 10 or upgrades in the future, you know, this could all change. Maybe then having those Smithwyrms would have made a tangible difference. It's hard to say whether that will happen for sure, but as for me, I'm happy with my 2 Smithwyrms. My intention is to try to summon as much as possible, even if it's 1350, I think every little bit counts. But anyway guys, thank you for watching this video, I hope it was helpful to you. I also want to make this video in part because I'm still planning on doing a build basics video about weapons, which is the final part of builds I want to discuss. But a big part of that is the smithy in the Halidom, and I also think, based on the director's message to us, weapons might be seeing somewhat of a change. So I am holding off on that a little bit, but I wanted to go ahead and show this to you, give you a peek behind the curtain of what I'm working with when I'm clearing these challenges and sharing my gameplay. It's kind of the same philosophy I have with my entire collection, where I am really trying to build out everybody that I can to a certain extent. So that is my attitude. I use everybody in my barracks. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a good weekend. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.